Hey guys, so we're getting to the end of what they call the summer school holidays. They just had 5 weeks of so-called summer school holidays. Ironically though, most kids, to varying degrees, have spent a goodly proportion of it either actually at school or at least doing schoolwork. So it's absolutely ridiculous. You know, first of all, I've got to state or acknowledge that depending on which source you look at, the Japan education system is in the top 10 high school education systems in the world. That is true as far as the quality of their education, or what they actually learn, perhaps is a better way to look at it, because it's typical of Japanese society and the work harder, not smarter mentality. You know, it's absolutely ridiculous how much time the kids spend doing schoolwork and at school. It's absolutely ridiculous, and particularly when you compare it with countries like Finland and Sweden that have very high level, or if not the highest levels of education in the world, and yet the kids don't spend nearly as much time at school or nearly as much time doing schoolwork as they do in Japan. And it's probably because a lot of the stuff here is repetitive, same as Japanese society. There's a lot of time wasted with faffing around, with doing stuff you don't need to, a lot of unnecessary repetition. So it's that work harder, not smarter thing that they seem to, it pervades right through Japanese society, that the harder you do stuff or the more you do stuff, the better it'll be, instead of being sort of logical and critical about how you do it and finding a better way to do it. So just repetitive, you know. So during the usual school term, kids go to school, high school kids, so I'm going to lump junior high school and high school together, although the high school kids tend to do more of everything, but generally you can lump them together. They go to school usually from 8 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. That's actually usual classes, so that's 40 hours a week. And then they'll have club activities. We talked about club before. Club could be 2 days or 4 days or 5 days or 6 days a week. And that could be basketball or baseball or volleyball or something like that. Or something inside like Go, where they do the board games, or they do IT, computer stuff or something like that. But we'll just ignore that extra 20, 30, 40 hours of club. We'll ignore that for the moment because that's not really academic. That's more about whatever that's supposed to be about. And again, some of the kids really do enjoy club, and you know, there's no doubt that it has some benefits to them. But again, how much time a week do you expect a kid to stay at school? You know, and weekends and everything else. But we'll ignore club for a moment. So basic academic lessons, usually about 40 hours a week. And then quite often they'll have extra classes in the afternoon, depending on the school. And then the most ridiculous thing is the Juku. And Juku is sometimes translated to mean cram school, but we'll ignore that because it's not really, cram school doesn't really illustrate what Juku really is. So let's just call it Juku because that's what it is. And the Juku system is basically private businesses that operate these little after-school weekend schools, basically. And they're a total waste of time. I've talked about them before. Actually, I shouldn't blanket it like that. They're often a total waste of time. What happens is, usually when kids get to 12 years old and they go into junior high school, quite often the parents will automatically enroll them into a Juku. And we know lots of people who've done this. And over the years, you know, I'll sometimes ask them, oh, you know, they'll say, oh, she's starting Juku next month, you know, because she's going into junior high school. Oh, really? You know, what's good about Juku? Or sort of ask it in a sort of an innocent sort of way, like why Juku? And their answer usually is because she's starting junior high school. So there's no real questioning of why they need to do this. Now Juku, usually they go after school, so they might finish school at 4 o'clock and go to Juku at 4:30 or 5 o'clock. And sometimes they'll stay there 3, 4, 5 hours. We actually have a friend who owns a Juku, and I've spent a fair bit of time, when I go past his Juku, sometimes I stop and go in and sit at his desk and we talk, and his desk is just inside the entrance of the Juku, so I get to see what's going on in there. And there'll be kids there till they're open till 10:30 at night, and there'll be kids in there till 10:30 at night. Now, in fairness, there are kids who go in there and the Juku teachers, the teachers are usually just university students, and the Juku's their part-time job, right? So you've got these university students that are 19 or 20 years old, helping these kids that are, you know, between 12 and 17. And of course, those university students have varying degrees of ability, right? And they'll help them. They're supposed to help the kids with their homework or with things that they don't understand. Now, we know some kids who have actually been helped by their teacher at Juku and tell us, oh yeah, my Juku teacher is really helpful. However, I've seen it firsthand and I've heard about it a lot, that, you know, I've seen them in the Juku. The high school kids will go in, they'll sit down, they'll put all their books out, they'll go off to the convenience store, buy some food, and come back and sit down at the table with their friends and look at their smartphones and eat some food and do very little. The students who really focus at Juku and sit down and do their homework and things like that usually are self-motivated and could do that at home, right? Because the Juku's attitude is that these students are customers, right? The Juku rely on these kids for their income, right? These kids are customers, their parents are customers. So all the Juku is interested in is keeping the kids happy. And it's ridiculous. The atmosphere in there is just ridiculous. The one I go to, the owner of it and the university students who are the teachers, clown around with the kids and joke around and carry on like fools, really, to keep them happy. It sort of reminds me a little bit of the way the English schools work here. You know, it's not really about education, it's about keeping the kids happy, because then the kids are happy to go there and keep going there, and they don't want to stop, and the parents are happy to keep paying the money because the kid's happy, it's working, right? And it doesn't really matter if it's helping them with their education, right? So, and the cost of these Juku, I mean, if a kid goes, you know, maybe once a week or twice a week, it might cost maybe $200 a month. If the kid goes 4 or 5 times, it could cost $400 or $500 a month, right? The parents are forking out, and quite often, total waste of money, right? So then you've got to ask yourself, what's the point? Why? I mean, you'd imagine in most countries that parents would be asking and the media would be asking. I mean, this is another thing about Japanese society, that you don't see like investigative journalism here very much when it comes to this sort of society stuff. You know, in some countries, journalists would do a story on this and say, what's the story with Juku? Why do we need, if we've already got a school system where the kids are going 40 hours a week and they're getting given hours of homework every night and every weekend, why do we need to be paying money for these Juku? Why do the kids need, when they finish school at the end of the day after 8 hours at school, why do they need to go to these private places to get properly educated, allegedly, right? You'd think most parents would be asking that question, wouldn't they? But they don't. And nobody questions it. And that's the answer I've got when I've asked parents, because I ask the question as if I'm curious to know if it's a good thing, if I should send my kids to, right? You know, oh, Juku, right, is Juku good? You know, why do you send them to Juku? And they'll just say, oh, because he's started junior high school. And that's just their automatic response. So it's automatic. If a kid's going to start junior high school, well, they should go into Juku, right? So, I mean, there's no doubt some kids definitely get some benefit from going to Juku. There's no doubt. If they happen to go to a good one and there happen to be some good teachers there that help them, there's no doubt. But then the question is, why do they need that help? Why is it, if they're spending 40 hours a week at school, you know, I can't remember, I saw a documentary a long time ago about the education system in Finland, and high school kids spend like 20 hours a week at school, right? And yet when it comes to those international tests that they do, Finland scores really high. You know, Japan's kids spend 40 hours a week at school, and it's still not enough. They've still got to go to Juku after school and on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday, and school. Quite often high schools will have lessons after school and on the weekends, extra lessons. And I know one high school where a kid we know gets sent to the extra lessons. If they don't do well enough in a test, they've got to go to these extra lessons, So it's ridiculous. And having watched lessons too, because of course we go along to the school sometimes to watch lessons. They have this thing twice a year where parents can go and watch a lesson. And when you see what they actually get done in an hour, some of you might remember I mentioned a while ago of a lesson I watched where it was an English lesson, and the whole lesson was, can you ride a unicycle? Right? It was basically it. They sort of faffed around that and a couple other questions, and that was a 50-minute English lesson, you know, just really unproductive. And the homework that they get is really repetitive. So our junior high school kid came home with a big stack of books at the beginning of the holidays, and we worked out how many days we had during the holidays and how many pages, and it worked out to 11 pages of homework a day. And it's really intense. Like the homework that they're given is really time intensive and really repetitive. So, you know, there'd be like a math formula question. There'd be 5 of them exactly the same. It's like, well, okay, if she can get all those right, she pretty much knows it. But there's another 30 of them, exactly the same format question, which means if you can get one right, you're going to get 30 right. But you've got to go through this whole process, this whole formula, and the time to do 30 math questions was huge. You know, that was 1 page. She has to do 11 pages, all the different subjects. So it's just that same thing that we've talked about over the years in Japanese society in general, where you get this time-consuming faffing, you know, wasting time and working harder, not smarter, and non-productive, and but no one questions it. You know, because for all of them, it's just all normal. It's normal. I used to have this guy who I used to talk to sometimes, whose English was pretty good. And when I talked about stuff like this, he'd say, it's normal, I think. It's normal, I think. And that rings in my head when it comes to stuff like this, because that's just what they think. It's normal. You know, and they don't look. Again, you know, it'd be great to see some investigative journalism here, where they say, here's our system, and here's the Finnish system, you know, or the Swedish system, and look how much more effective theirs is, and how much less time and less faffing there is, and do away with the Juku. Shouldn't need them. Shouldn't need the Juku. They should cease to exist. If the education system was proper, it should cease to exist. So the school holidays, you know, every kid we ran into, and that's what sort of triggered this video, really. I mean, our own kid has had to spend, you know, sort of all morning every day of the holidays doing homework, and then the other kids in our neighbourhood and kids we run into and cousins and all sorts of kids, you know, same thing. And what are you doing? Oh, what did you do on the holidays? Oh, I went to Juku. I went to club. Club's just huge, the amount of time they spend at club, and going to school. You know, we'll go visit friends, and the kid will come home in a school uniform and been to school. Oh, I had a special class on today. You know, they go to school. Some of the high schools, the kids go to school one day in the middle of the holidays to take the homework in that they've done already. The half the homework, they give it to the teachers, obviously, so the teachers can check it. But just, you know, ineffective, faffing, you know, and ineffective education system that no one seems to question. They all just accept it, you know. So it's just the way it is. I mean, we made a few videos over the years for people who are parents who are going to be raising kids in Japan. It's frustrating. It really, really is, watching this ridiculous system. You know, where and the kids will come home. They actually give them the book and like the book with the questions, and so they'll have one book that has the questions in it, and then they'll have another book that has the workings, like showing how it's done. So like in the math example, there's one book that just has the questions, and then there's another book that has the workings, how you process that question, right? And then they have another book that actually has the workings and the answers in it, right? Which means that some kids are just going to be sitting there copying, because they've got to do 6 million of these things. They're going to be sitting there copying what's in the book, right? Some kids are going to be doing that and learning nothing. And often, Navi's annoying, isn't it, sometimes? often too, you'll ask the kids, did the teacher explain this? No. Right? And that's really common. Get that all the time. Did the teacher explain this? You know, I get asked stuff when I go to that guy's Juku. Sometimes, you know, there'll be some kid with some English and I'll have a look. And why is this and why is that? And I'll say, did the teacher at school explain this? No. And that's the other thing, is the teachers set mountains of homework that they haven't taught. So they haven't taught it in the classroom. They just set this here, go and do these 600 math questions, but they haven't explained it yet. And so the kid goes off home and then they have to use these books to try and work out how it's done. And I mean, I have heard some people justify that, it helps them learn how to work it out for themselves, but it doesn't. It doesn't. And if that's the case, what's school for? If school's not for the teachers to teach the kids, just to hand them homework, they don't really need the teachers at all, do they? So, you know, send them home with this homework that they haven't been taught how to do it. It's just ridiculous. It really is. It really is. Over the years, before our kids were in this system, you know, we've got in-laws and people with kids, and you know, those kids that turn up at our family events with their English homework, you know, and say, you know, what's this and what's that? And I'd say to them, did the teacher explain this? And, oh no, she just gave us the homework. You know, and that's just what they do. And then, see, that's what keeps the Juku in business again, because the kids go off to Juku with these huge bags. A lot of the high school kids have 2 school bags. They have a backpack and they have another big bag full of books. And those kids will turn up at the Juku and walk in and say, I've got all this homework and I don't know how to do it. And if they're lucky, the Juku will be one of the ones that has someone there that can help them, you know. But quite often they don't. Quite often those Juku, they'll have like 30 kids in a room, all sitting there doing their own homework, and then maybe one university student wandering around, flirting with the girls usually. That's amazing. The Juku thing, bloody Navi doesn't shut up, does it? The Juku really deserves its own video, because some of the stuff that goes on there is just ridiculous, because all the Juku's interested in is keeping the kids happy. So you get these 18 and 19-year-old university students who are the teachers, right, with no teaching qualifications at all, teaching or talking to or flirting with 16 and 17-year-old high school girls, right? And no one has a problem with that, because the owner of the Juku's happy, because the young dudes flirting with the young girls is keeping the girls happy, and they'll keep coming and the Juku keeps making money. So there's a lot of that. That's a whole video in itself. That's some of the stuff I see at the Juku is ridiculous. So anyway, the education system, it probably won't be the last time we talk about this, because it's absolutely ridiculous. It really is. And as a parent, it's really frustrating. I mean, as someone who's not a parent here, just watching it, you know, they probably just shake their head and go, oh, well, that's amazing. School, everyone in their school uniforms on a Saturday, off to school in the morning, you know, or a Sunday, or 8 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night, coming home from Juku, 9 o'clock at night, in their school uniform, you know, and they've been at school for 8 hours and then Juku for 5 hours, you know. Whether or not they did any work's another thing, but that's, you know, that's their life. That's their life. They really only got, during the school holidays, they really only got a week, and that was Obon. And usually Obon, the Jukus will close, and usually the schools don't have lessons, so they get 1 week usually. But see, they've still got to get their homework done. So they might not have to go to Juku, or they might not have to go to school, but they still got to get their homework done. So it's just ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Those of you that are watching this, I know some of our patrons live in Japan and have kids. Some other people watching this video actually are ALTs that work at schools as assistant language teachers. So no doubt some of you guys will have your own comments to make. But the end result, it's just, you know, okay, so Japan might be in the top 10 for, you know, the level of the education of the high school kids, but look at how they're going about achieving it. It's typical. Working harder, not smarter. Wasting all that time, ineffective, you know, wasting time faffing around for sort of, you know, the same result that you could get with a lot less faffing, you know. But it's not going to change. Like everything else in Japan, it's going to stay the way it is, because everybody just accepts it as normal. Nobody questions it. The parents are all forking out hundreds of dollars a month for the Juku. and Juku are making money, nobody questions it. If logic came into it, all those Juku would cease to exist overnight and the education system would have to improve itself, you know. Anyway, that's enough of that ranting. Nagoya City, lots of fun. I'm doing the speed limit. I've been doing the speed limit the whole way. You'll notice everybody's overtaking. Anyway, that was that. More videos coming soon.